Hi everyone, welcome. Thanks for being here so early in the morning. I'm Shannon Roddy. I am the Student Services Librarian here at American.
And I'm Clay, and I'm the and I'm the Access Services Librarian here at American.
And Kalani has been sick all week, so
yes, and I'm on the mend, but
she's
my voice is still not
voice.
where it needs to be.
So this is Get Smart, our smartphones in the law school classroom, a recipe for chaos. We're actually going to talk about laptops in the classroom as well. It just didn't fit as nicely into our Get Smart theme. So yeah, we hit the ball a little bit there. So this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to frame the debate and then talk about the research. And this is a lot of stuff, it is out there in the law school literature, higher ed generally, even K through 12. Like this is, we understand that this is a a hot debate, and it's all over everywhere. So I don't know that we're gonna present any groundbreaking information regarding the debate and the research, but we thought we would kind of synthesize it all as a resource for all of you, give you the pros and cons of technology in the classroom, and then talk about if you do choose to use it, which I think most professors end up allowing technology in the classroom. Really good ways to use technology to engage your students and make you a better teacher. And then at the very end, we'll talk about if you do choose to ban or limit technology, a couple ways that you might think about doing that.
So basically, there's a debate about whether or not people want to allow students to use laptops in the classroom. So we'll go over a little bit of both sides. So the debate basically is the pros are, of course, that you can take notes faster, that you can engage with online material, you can use it in class, ask them to find extra sources, you can maybe watch a video or something to support what you're talking about in class. But then also it can facilitate interaction, and we'll talk about some of those tools a little bit later. And then also increased rates of student participation, and we'll also talk about tools that help with that. The cons of using laptops or smartphones or other technology in the classroom are people don't retain information the same, and so there's some studies, and we'll kind of do an overview of some of those that say basically people are able to understand and take in information better when they are handwriting, and that is part of the big debate, and it's about learning and learning styles. And then also by using laptops and other devices in class, there's more time for distraction, and we'll talk about some studies where they found that students were spending a lot of time not paying attention. And then also there is the decreased ability to be attentive to the lecture, which that's a little bit different than the distractions, just because that's more looking at you're transcribing rather than actually taking in the information and doing that mental work that you have to do to think about it. So I tried to say this out loud, and it's a bit of a tongue twister. Yes, it's a tongue twister. But basically, in most studies, the mere presence of a smartphone in the classroom, or having one while you're in class and having it on, reduce students' ability, or students' cognitive ability, and their ability to understand what the information that was being presented to them. And so basically, a lot of the studies look at the idea of learning and note-taking and how people take in information, how they retain it. And so basically, it's more than just typing it out and, you've typed it once and so now you remember it. You have to actually, synthesize that information. And then there's this idea of generative versus non-generative learning and note-taking. And so the the generative is, you're summarizing, you're paraphrasing. Some people use shorthand. You might develop a system of codes or mnemonics that is all doing that. But when you're doing that mental work to actually learn this information. And then there's this idea of transcribing versus retaining information. And a lot of studies found that basically people are just typing it out verbatim. And there was even a cartoon when I was in one of the studies where it's just like, the teacher's talking and he's saying, like, type exactly what I say, and you can see on all the students' laptops, it says type exactly what I say. So like it's almost like a joke. And then also the typing itself and concentrating on maybe the formatting and the typing and spelling words right and everything kind of impairs what you're actually getting. Okay, so I hope everyone can hear me. In a lot of the studies, well, this is a summary of like two of the studies. One of them involving law students, one of them involving college students. And so they are likely to spend a great deal of class time using applications that are unrelated to their coursework. And so that's all the shopping and the Instagramming and all of the other things that they're doing while they're not paying attention to you while you're giving your lecture. And then for the law students, almost all of the law students were doing other things for at least 5 minutes of the class, and it looks like more than half of them missed half the class, or because they were doing other things. And also people found that they were less likely to be satisfied with their education when they were spending more time using their laptops or other devices for non-coursework. So this is one of the main studies, and if you look up this issue, it's probably going to be one of the first things that comes up. And this study was done in the early 2000s, and basically they did 3 different experiments. They tried to figure out whether or not, if you require students to use a computer, and that one of the, and in the next slide we'll talk about another study, but they found that one of the shortcomings of this study was the fact that this study required you to use a computer, and they also put a distraction in between you taking the notes and then doing the quiz. And so, but they did find that students had, they basically did worse on the exam if they used a laptop to take their notes. And then they found that handwritten notes help to improve memory, information retention, thought organization, and increase idea generation. So the MIT study found a relationship between the kind of the same thing, but they didn't require students to use laptops. They studied people at West Point in an economics class, which was required for the first year students, and they found this kind of the same findings, of course, that it's always better to handwrite than it is to use a laptop, but their experiment was a little bit different. So yeah, and they used 3 different models as well, and they also added a tablet as part of their experiment. So while we can talk about all the reasons why, of course, it reduces retention, it's using technology. Students using technology to take notes and do coursework might create distractions. There are also some good reasons why you might want to allow this use in the classroom. And so basically other studies have looked at the fact that, basically students don't need laptops to be distracted. There's other distractions in the classroom, right? And so you don't necessarily have to, it doesn't have to be just the laptop that's distracting you. And even with the laptop, there might still be other distractions as well. And so we need to teach how to manage those distractions and how to not necessarily multitask, because for most, our multitasking doesn't exist. And so, but I believe
multitasking doesn't exist. That's my hard line.
And I do, but that's neither here nor there. But we don't want to teach the students that, right? We want them to learn how to how to, of course, manage distractions. And then there's this idea that some content can't be copied. This doesn't always necessarily apply to law students because we're doing Socratic method and, we are giving a lecture and they're taking notes in that way. But for, the studies that looked at college students, like things like graphs and equations and things like that in an engineering or a math class or economics class or something like that, it wouldn't really be easily, you could do it easier with the computer. And then laptops reduce writing time, and so if you are using effective note-taking strategies, you can use some of those same methods that you use to handwrite when you are using a laptop. And so it's all about how you actually use the laptop and maybe teaching students how to take notes using a laptop rather than just, just teaching them to type and regurgitate what you're saying. And then also it can enhance class time, and we will talk a lot about different ways that happens. There also have been studies that kind of measure students' views of using technology, and students definitely, especially now, are used to technology. They're smartphones and laptops, they've grown up with them, they're used to using them. And so there was one study done in 2016 that basically found that the students in that study felt that their participation increased and they were more motivated when technology was brought into the classroom. But this study specifically used some different techniques to actually engage students using that technology. Another benefit of using either smartphones or laptops or other types of technology in the classroom is it increases accessibility. Some people might not be able to write as fast as others because of a physical disability or even a learning disability. And then for visually impaired students or other types of disabilities, it really can enhance maybe your experience of the classroom. So the question is whether or not this is a mistake, just a full-on ban. Basically, you're treating the symptom, which is the misuse of laptops, and not really looking at the idea of using them for effective teaching. And then also this whole idea that I just talked about of, these people, when I say these people, I mean young people, the ones that we're teaching, they rely on technology. And then also, who are we to say how you should take your notes? If you are better off taking notes with the laptop, then, you should be able to do that. I know I would not have survived law school having to handwrite my notes. And, I didn't have a laptop the first semester of law school, and it was terrible, and my life completely changed, the second semester. So that's that. And then there's the control. We talked about the chaos, so there's the control, and basically what we need to do is think a little bit more broadly and a little bit more creatively about how to actually use this tool rather than just full out ban it. Or you can if you want, but there are ways to actually engage it, and we will talk about those now.
Okay. So I think a lot of people in the pro laptop and smartphone camp just kind of feel like to be a better teacher, right? That it's on the instructor to engage students, and there's always going to be, before there were laptops, you pass notes in class, there were people pass the time in various ways. People get creative. So it's really on the instructor, be a better instructor. That I think that really is the key takeaway from the pro technology people. So I think also we don't want to just use technology for technology's sake. That it needs to serve a purpose. It needs to further students' learning experience. So here are a couple methods. Hopefully some are new to you. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with some of them that you might use laptops and smartphones in the classroom. So gamification. I want to highlight two kind of fun-ish things that you might, has anybody used Kahoot? Yeah? Very cool. And then Goose Chase, which is a scavenger hunt app. And there are a ton of different scavenger hunt apps out there. So if you haven't used that one, maybe you have used a similar one. So Kahoot allows you to create your own multiple choice quizzes to play live in class, and you can do a player versus player or team versus team. So player versus player, everybody's on their own device playing, and then team versus team, you would gather around a shared device to play. It's free for schools. I really like it as a form of kind of low stakes formative assessment. That is such a buzzword in legal education now with the ABA standards, and I think it's a fun-ish way to do multiple choice prep for the bar exam. That is one of the big initiatives at our school right now. Getting students more comfortable with multiple choice questions for the bar exam, and kind of trying to integrate that into the curriculum. So I think it's a cool way to do it, and we're going to play.
Can you capture that data?
Yes. Okay. So I have created an account. That's what you do, and it's really simple to create your questions. And this is the way it works. We're going to do player versus player, and just give it a second. Okay, so if everyone who has a device would go to, if you have the Kahoot app, that's great. We're going to turn down the volume. It's really loud. Or you can go to Kahoot.it and enter the game pin to play. Corey's in. Yay! Awesome. I think we need some music. Like, that's part of it.
I didn't know how it would sound.
Okay, there we go. Awesome. Is everyone in who's playing? Anybody? Okay.
I'm trying to download the app, but I guess I can just go to
Yeah, just go to the URL.
what's the URL?
Just
Kahoot.it. Yeah. I guess so.
I suppose, yes. Is it a verb? Is it a...
It is now.
I've made librarian into a verb.
And we'll wait a couple more seconds for people to get in. But obviously, you could do this in an anonymous way. Ask everybody to just, use, a funny or, nickname or something like that. Or you can, actually have them use their real name if you want to have that kind of information. Okay, I think we're gonna go. All right, there are 2 questions. Get ready. And so you pick one of the shapes. And you have 20 seconds. I set that. So I think you can do anywhere from 10 seconds to about a minute, which is great, I think, for
Class time.
if you're really trying to get students accustomed to answering multiple choice questions in a timely manner. Okay. And we're going to do next. Chris, who's Chris? Is in the lead. It's based on your right answer and your time. So good job. Good job, Billy Joe.
Quick learner.
Wow.
No one got the
No
right
one got
answer.
the
It was
right-
a trick question. You all thought it was going to be shoe.
Wow.
Okay, and then so you have your leaderboard. Congratulations, Chris, John S., and Joel. Good job. And then you can, if I wanted to save these results, I could, and obviously with formative assessment, one of the goals is to not only evaluate what your students are learning, but evaluate yourself as an instructor to see if you are imparting, the correct information and your students are absorbing it. So kind of a quick, fun way to assess yourself as well, and figure out if your students are really getting, what they should out of your class. All right. Thanks, everyone, for playing.
Can you create these questions on the fly?
I think it would be a little tricky. Only that you would be using a little bit of class time to do that. I think
Like maybe one of the other tools would, like maybe we're
we're going to talk about some polling tools, and
that might be a better option for that.
Yeah, actually, Cali's Instapoll might be better for creating it.
Yeah.
I think that might be better because you could actually just verbally give the question to the students using Instapoll as opposed to this, because I think you'd just be taking a little bit of class time to to actually type in the question. Okay. Give me just a second. Back up. Okay, so that's Kahoot. And then Goose Chase, we're not going to have a fun scavenger hunt demo, unfortunately, because it is only app-based. There's no URL for it. So I'll just tell you a little bit about how it works and how you might use it in your class. So like I said, it's a scavenger hunt app. There are lots of similar scavenger hunt apps out there. They do have a free plan, but it's fairly limited in the number of players you can have with the free plan or their subscription plan. So I encourage you to, if you want to do a scavenger hunt type app, you might want to do a little bit more research into to different apps. I think you could also do a scavenger hunt using Instagram or Twitter if you wanted to go the social media route. So with Goose Chase, it's really designed as a true scavenger hunt, like go around DC and snap pictures of the monuments and, with riddles and clues and all that kind of stuff. But I think that you could actually use it in the law school classroom because you can just ask, substantive questions and have them type in text as a response. Or you could have them take pictures. I think that could be a really kind of a fun way. I know some of the professors at our school use YouTube clips and stuff like that to teach certain concepts. So you could always ask, your students to take a picture that best illustrates a certain concept that you're trying to get across to them. And this is perhaps not true formative assessment or really, because I think that there's just there's a lot of room for creativity and difference of opinion and that kind of thing. I just think it's kind of a fun way to engage your students and get them thinking creatively, and then of course they could kind of explain to you why they took that picture to illustrate a particular concept. I think that could be fun. So if you wanted to just use Instagram or Twitter, obviously everybody in your class would need to have one of those social media accounts. With Instagram, for those of us who are on have aged out of the millennial generation, Instagram is just picture-based really, but it does support hashtags, so you could ask your students to take a picture of something or find a picture, upload it to Instagram, and then tag it with your class name or section number or something like that. And then same thing with Twitter, which supports either visuals or text, and have them tag it. And I think that you could do kind of a scavenger hunt type thing that way too. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm sorry that I can't demo it. It doesn't really work in this kind of setting.
Give us an example about how to use it in the classroom, like what class and how would you?
Well, so we're both librarians, and so we teach advanced legal research, which is a skills class, and I think it kind of lends itself to skills type classes. You know, it would. I think you could have them do a basic research task, right? Like find a case that says blah blah blah.
Take
blah,
a
blah.
screenshot and hashtag it, and yeah.
Yeah. And also, I think for us, we also teach more informal workshops and things like that. So not even in a formal classroom setting, but like in that kind of workshop setting. I think it, obviously, when you're doing a workshop, you're trying to make it as engaging and entertaining as possible for students because it's an optional type thing. I think it will work really well there too. Sure. Okay, another idea you might think about in the classroom setting is using a shared document to facilitate conversation, collaboration, that kind of thing. Probably everyone has used Google Docs. If your school has an Office 365 subscription, we have one here, so we use that shared document option. And again, you could do the same thing on Twitter to kind of collaborate and share ideas with a hashtag. And there's also Hypothesis. Has anybody used Hypothesis? Anybody heard of it? Yeah. Have you used it in a classroom, or tell me how you've used it?
I haven't used it in a classroom yet. I've just done a lot of research for it in preparation in case anybody wants to use it in a classroom.
Okay. Are you an IT person, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So I will show it to you in just a second. So using shared documents, some ways you might to do some brainstorming. Asking questions, Google Docs has an anonymous, you can log in anonymously, and so if you want to encourage questions, but you think maybe your students are not super comfortable raising their hands, that you could have up a Google Doc throughout the class where people could ask questions. You could periodically check it to see if there are any questions that you need to address. And then collaborative editing and annotating. I think the last one is especially applicable for us as librarians and anybody who is in the legal writing curriculum. You could have students, collaborate. You could give them kind of a sample bad exam answer and have them edit it, or a sample bad memo and have them edit it collaboratively. And then for research purposes, annotating might be a really good thing. And so with that, I'm going to switch over and show you Hypothesis, which is pretty cool. So it is, it's a Chrome extension. So once you create your account at that's the URL, hypothes.is. So once you create an account, you need to use Chrome to really be able to use the annotating feature. And then you install the extension, and basically you can go anywhere on the web and highlight text and annotate it, and you can tag it and make it, if you're in the public setting, you just tag it, and that again is how your class would find the annotations. So everybody in your class would be using a certain tag, and then you find it. So I annotated, I thought for our purposes, again, as librarians teaching research, using Google Scholar to pull up cases and then having students annotate them. So I did one the other day with the hashtag CALIcon18. You do a search for that, and there's my annotation of this case. You can see my my annotations. This is the the part that I highlighted is the italics, and then my note. Oh, sorry, is it? Thanks. We want it to be accessible. So the italics is the part that I highlighted, and then that's my note. So the second one, I just searched for things that said "Get Smart" because I like a theme. And that's my annotation. And then you can choose to visit the annotations in context, and that's going to actually take you to the case in Google Scholar, and then you'll see the actual highlighted text, and then my note. and then you can just you can toggle back and forth between the annotations. There's my other annotation. Does that make sense to everybody how it works? Yeah, again, I think you could, any if you want your students to read an article that's just freely available on the web, this is a way that they could, yeah.
Does it work with subscription-based databases too, or just things that are publicly available?
It says publicly available, so I actually don't know. I didn't test it.
But probably not.
I'm thinking probably not.
But like Power Notes,
But yeah.
you could try like Power Notes for something like that, because I think you can collaborate on there too.
Yeah. So Power Notes is, I'm sure they have a booth here.
They do. They're down there.
But it's a subscription-based kind of annotating thing, and it's specifically for legal research and to use on subscription databases. But this is just a free thing that I think you could use, obviously, in class for an in-class exercise, or then out of class as well. Any other questions about that? How it works? Okay, cool. Has anyone used a Google Doc in class, like in a collaborative sense like that?
In this, like in the research, I found that I found somewhere where it said, students were more likely to ask, or in some classes, students are more comfortable asking questions, and so more questions were generated using something like Twitter or using something like the Google Doc for those people who are scared to raise their hand or scared to, to ask the dumb question, and yeah.
So we went over hypothesis, and then polling. So I'm sure people have used Cali's Instapoll. Somebody said they already. You have used it. Anybody else used Cali's free Instapoll? Well, we're gonna now. So yay.
Instapoll is integrated into Twin too, so if you use Twin for your classes,
Oh, whoops. Hold on. Let me go back to the PowerPoint so that everybody can see. Okay, so Instapoll it's pretty bare bones, but it's also free, and it's free to anyone. You don't even need to have a Cali login to do it. So if everybody will go to this URL. Yes, it's www.cali.org/Instapoll. And then once you're there, you'll join poll 5115. And then answer this question. Oh, let me make it bigger. I'm sorry. Can everybody see that? I'll read it as well. So after you join poll 5115, the question is, in the pilot episode of Get Smart, there is a password used about a certain baseball team. What was it? A, Boston Red Sox break the curse. B, New York Mets win doubleheader. C, Chicago Cubs tear down Wrigley Field. D, Washington Nationals win pennant. Has everybody been able to get there?
No.
So for those of you who are on the site, you'll see, it's bare bones. It's just, multiple choice, A, B, C, D. Which I think it really does lend itself to if you want to ask a question on the fly in class, or if you want to have something prepared ahead of time. Okay, has everybody who wants to play had an opportunity to respond? Okay. What did I say it was?
5115.
Okay. Oh, wait. How do I?
You have to log into your account.
Oh, sorry. It would help if I demoed it appropriately.
Where's the poll thing? Isn't there like an admin where you set it up?
I thought there was. Sorry,
there's a
this is not where I. Oh crap, y'all. I'm sorry. I messed it up. But I think you get the point. I'm really sorry. I thought I. Anyway, it's supposed to be really easy to use, and I messed it up. So I'm sorry.
It is.
But I think, I think
is
you get the point,
easy
right?
To use.
Oh, and so let's just do old school. And who thinks it's A? Who thinks it's B? Who thinks it's C? Does anybody think it's D from 1965? So the answer is B. And I guess when the pilot aired in 1965, the Mets were really pretty bad, and the likelihood that they were going to win a doubleheader was slim. This is all based on Get Smart trivia from the internet. I've never seen the pilot. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I promise the next one's going to work. Okay. So another option, has anybody used Poll Everywhere? Yeah, I think it's pretty popular out there. So it's free for up to 40 students, and after that, there's a subscription plan. So especially for smaller classes, I think that it's pretty useful. You can use it either use it through their computer or through your phone and actually text the answer. And the nice thing about Poll Everywhere is you can actually integrate it into PowerPoint and Google Slides. So fingers crossed this works. I just integrated that slide, and you have to download a plugin for PowerPoint, and then the question actually appears in the slide. So I have currently set it to hide the results view, and you can unclick this if you actually want to see students, in real time as they answer the question. I clicked the hide one because I do think that students might tend to cave to peer pressure and just vote for the answer that they see other people voting for. So if you mark it hidden until time is up, then they don't get to kind of rely on their peers. They have to really answer the question. Has everybody had a chance to respond? Okay. All right, and somebody is still going. So this is how it looks like if you were in the kind of the real-time view. As people change their minds, it goes up and down.
Is it possible to lock it so that their first response is the only response?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But still, they could wait for others to respond,
Right.
And then.
You can also set it up where you're not showing the results until you're ready. That's what you have attached first.
Yeah. So we could go back to, hiding it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the bees have it. It was called Aardvark. Don't be ashamed, wombats. Be proud.
Wow.
That's right. Okay, so those are hopefully some, kind of helpful tools for you if you want to integrate technology into your classroom and really make it engaging. I mean, the reality is integrating those kind of tools into a class is time consuming. It is going to be harder. You have to, you can't just use your same lecture notes that you've been using for the past 5 years. You really have to change things up. And we both teach advanced legal research online, and this is the first year that it's 100% online, and it has been it's been tough. Like, we have had to integrate a lot more content into the online platform. So I know from just recent experience how much more time consuming it is to do these kind of things, and to really engage your students. But I think the payoff is great, especially as we really move to that formative assessment model in law schools. And I think these are some really good tools for figuring out what in the heck your students are learning as they go throughout the semester, instead of waiting for it to be a big surprise when you grade final exams. Okay, but that's all right. If you don't want to have laptops in your classroom, no judgment here. We are agnostic about it. We're just presenting the information to you. You want to do this one, or?
Okay, yeah. So if you want to limit laptop use, which you of course can always just ban laptops, and
Hopefully nobody needs to be told how to say,
right, don't bring a laptop to class.
class.
But then you can also have a laptop free zone at the front of class for people who want to handwrite, and they can feel a little bit more engaged that way. You can have screen down times where you actually want to engage with the class, maybe when you're doing question and answer. And then you can have a policy against non-class use, and that goes towards your participation grade, and you can grade that how you want to. Some people might use a demerit system or something like that, but you can definitely set a policy where if I see you on Instagram or jcrew.com, that's it. And then there's also just outright shaming, and I had a professor who was not scared to do that. So yeah, and some people walk around instead of just standing at the front of the class, and that also kind of puts eyes in the, people feel a little bit more nervous about actually sitting there and web surfing if you're walking around. So those are just some ideas.
Okay, and then specifically to smartphones, I think it's, again, I guess you could have a policy where there's a basket at the door and everybody drop their phone in. I don't know how much law school professors really want to get into policing that kind of thing, but here is one idea if to limit smartphone use in your class. There's an app called Flipped. Has anybody used it or heard of it? So their whole premise is they love technology, just not in the classroom, that the classroom should be, a smartphone-free place. So it just to say you would require your students to acquire the app. It costs $4 for 4 months, so for the semester. And when they come into class, they flip off, and so it disables their phone except for emergency calls. And if they flip back on sometimes during the class, you as the instructor get all that data. So if they flipped back on for 15 minutes, you can see that. It's free use for instructors. You would just have your students pay or work out some other sort of payment arrangement. There's also institutional pricing available if your whole school was interested in it. Yeah.
Has anybody tried that? I'm just trying to imagine if I told my students they had to buy an app today.
Well, I know, right? That's why they do provide institutional price. The school could pick it up.
The whole concept.
Yeah, we haven't tried it, but we teach online, so but so no, and they seem to be a newer thing. I've just been reading about it, and I thought it was an interesting concept.
No, I agree. It's an interesting concept. I'm just
How do you get them to do it?
how I would. I had another question. Do you have to put in your class description that you're not going to allow laptops or cell phones?
I think that's probably up to the
You do it by
school.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah, And I think the problem with an outright ban is always the accessibility issue. You know, if you have students who have an accommodation and have to, you know, and as part of their accommodation they have a laptop, you know, there's that real stigma. You have no laptops except for one person. I think that's, personally to me, that's the biggest problem with an outright ban, is that you know, really stigmatizing certain students. But from what I have read, I mean, that law professors who have banned laptops in the classroom put it in the syllabus. Yeah.
I think on the accessibility issue too, that often what the Dean of Students Office does is they just send in a non-student that takes those notes for that accommodated student. So
That's a good workaround. Yeah. Yeah.
I think this would be great like in high school or in middle school or in elementary school these days. I think kids start carrying phones really easy, but, and we do have professors who ban laptops in their classes, and, you know, and I understand why, but I'm just of the opinion that I didn't have a laptop when I was in school, and if I sat in the back of the room, it was all over, you know, I mean, I purposely had to sit myself in front of the room because I knew I wouldn't pay attention.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I feel like by the time, especially they're in law school, they're paying for an education. I mean, you get your money's worth. And I know as a school, we're very concerned with our passage rates and all that kind of stuff, because it comes back, you know, on us in a negative way when our students don't do well. But it's just a very interesting thing.
It is, and I mean, I personally don't feel like I, you know, come down heavily on one side or another. And I also think, I mean, you're right, they're grown-ups, they're paying a lot for their education. You know, at some level, who are we to say how, you know, what you should bring to the classroom? Yeah.
I had a quick question. So I teach advanced civil research, and we have to use computers in order to complete exercises in class. I can't be on laptops. So the one policy I've considered, but I haven't done, is taking off points for people you catch. You know, you're obviously using Instagram or Facebook or messaging or something like that. Have you done that, or do you know anyone who's done that? Because I wouldn't want to introduce something that would really...
When I did it last semester, I did a lot of calling out because I knew they were.
You can tell, right, when somebody, you know, even if you're not looking at their screen, you can tell. Did you end up docking participation points?
Not really, because it was a small class, and there were a lot of distractions in that class, and it wasn't because of the laptops or anything. But that is something that, like it was a little bit too informal to actually make it that strict, because there was like 7 people in the class, and so but I could see doing that.
I see it going to participation points, right?
Especially.
Yeah.
And the other thing that frustrates me about people using computers or their smartphones in class is that it distracts other students. Like if you're in the back of the room and you see 10 people shopping for shoes online or something, it just reduces this idea that we're engaged in some sort of educational project together. Like I think it makes the whole class feel more distracted and aimless.
Yeah. When I was in law school, it was AOL Instant Messenger, and you'd be like looking over somebody's shoulder, you know, like, oh my God, what are they typing?
Right.
And so I that's why I like the idea of sitting the handwriters up front, and so removing that distraction. And because I feel like in law school, especially if you have handwriters in the classroom, they know they're distracted by technology. That's why they're choosing to handwrite. Absolutely. So they're trying to take away that temptation. So I think you can kind of do them a favor by having that laptop-free zone at the front, so that they're not distracted by others' laptop use. Yeah.
What I've seen over time is there's a lot of social pressure that's forcing the adoption of technology in the classroom. For years, I used to have a problem where the faculty kept voting against having Wi-Fi in the classroom. And that was an uphill battle just to get Wi-Fi. You know, and they pushed back, but the culture's changed so much. I guess they eventually realized they so over time, you know, it's happening. You can't stop it.
Yeah, you know, I read something when we were preparing for this about kind of on the pro computer side was, people are always going to find something to complain about, and it's laptops right now until you move on to something else. It just happens that that's the debate right now. And I just do think that we should be really, like, to the peer pressure aspect of it, like, if you're using technology, what are you using it for? Like, not just to have all the bells and whistles, but actually kind of furthering some sort of pedagogical, goal. Yeah, Jill.
I kind of, at one point, to the point of how do you get them off of it. And I don't have any empirical data on how well this worked, but it certainly got me some very interesting expressions. When I was teaching intro legal research when I was at the University of Maryland, I used to make the point about how platforms change and how you can't really get too attached to the same button always being in the same place, and you've got to think more sort of globally about systems. And then, as an example, I'd say, so you're all on Facebook, right? And I'd say, I don't mean now, because I know you're on Facebook now. And I get these startled looks, but I got the sense that at that moment I had everybody in the class. There was a kind of nervous laugh, but I had everybody's attention, at least for a little while. So it was almost a sense that if I kind of flipped it back on itself and acknowledged it for the reality that it is, that it was less, okay, she's going to say a thing. Oh, wait, what? So
yeah, and it kind of goes to that, like screens down time within class. Like, okay, everybody get off Instagram right now. What I'm about to say is really important. And if you do that a couple times, throughout the class, then you're at least jolting them for a moment, and hopefully imparting that what you're saying right now was really what you need. Is key takeaway here. Yeah.
Is there an assumption that you're not using it for a passive activity, like just audio memos, or is recording the class already forbidden, and you're going to assume that the instructor is using Panopto or something to record the class in the first place?
Say that again. I'm not following. Like,
use your device simply for audio memos to record what's going on.
Oh, well, so for instance,
passive use, but you're not, actively engaged in it. It's not distracting you.
Right. So I know we have a recording policy here at our school. Although I'm sure we're being recorded right now. But so that kind of thing is forbidden without prior approval by the instructor. So I think even if that were the case, that it was a passive activity, I think the like here at least, the instructor could say you've got to turn that off. Yeah. Again, unless it's for an accommodation. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? We'd love to hear. We have a little bit of time left. Like anybody's experience, good or bad, using any of these tools or other tools that you think people might be interested in? Yeah.
Our faculty, we have a subscription to Pull Everywhere. So our students are required to register with their accounts. And we have a few faculty that use it for attendance taking, and I know Ray's slides showed that. And it's worked really, really well. And she asks a question and actually, or puts a word on the board or whatever, or on a slide, and they have a very short period of time to log in and provide the word. So you also don't have the opportunity to text your friend who's at home.
Right.
Quickly log in. The word today is.
So all the students have to have an account then, right? So that it's tied to their identification.
Yeah. So that was kind of an unexpected use of the technology.
That's
and is it a fun question or is it a substantive question?
Sometimes it's just word. Today's word is hamburger.
Okay.
Just type in hamburger.
Yeah.
Or however it works.
So that's with this flipped app, which again I have no feeling about one way or another. You can the same kind of thing that the instructor can give a word at the beginning of a class and you can use it. They have to log in with that word and then flip off their phone. Yeah. Yes.
I don't know how many people know about this, but Cali has a program called ClassCasting, which is they sponsor a blog type place to post recordings of classes. So I've been participating in it since its inception, some few years ago. And I record every single class, video and audio, and put it up on ClassCasting. It's wonderful, and then students don't have to worry about recording themselves or I do ban in my regular classes all devices, and so they can always go back and look and get their notes if they want to update them.
Do a lot of them seem to use the recording?
Tremendous number.
Uh-huh.
And of course, it's great for people who have to miss class, and it's also great if you miss something that's happened, and it's readily available.
Do you think it discourages attendance in your physical class, or no? Because they know that you can get them.
Attendance policy.
Okay.
I don't have
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah.
So recently there was an KAOS article, and I think that's the same one that you referred to, where they had two CIOs have opposing sides as to should there be Wi-Fi in your classrooms, yes or no. And in the discussion for the guy, he said no, there shouldn't be. One of the things that he referred to is that there is research that shows that Silicon Valley types are active in trying to make us addicted to their technology. So that was one of the things that he used to say. That's a reason why we have to say no to Wi-Fi. I guess it's a sort of similar reason why some people say no to having laptops, because it's not essentially about the student having a choice, because they see it as our students are now addicted to these sort of technologies, and they just can't turn it off on their own.
I mean, that makes sense to me, but it also seems like, you're in class for a very finite period of time. You're not really changing their behavior overall, even if you banned it, just in the class. I do think that that's something to bring up, though, that to discourage laptop use, or to say, these are some of the ill effects of being constantly plugged in, and you might consider during class time, putting your smartphone away or not using your laptop, kind of just educating students, letting them, make the best decisions for themselves, but kind of taking away that peer pressure, like, oh, everybody has their laptop, I have to have my laptop. If the professor says, really, it's not necessary at least for this aspect of the class or whatever. I think that's good.
Yeah.
We're offering turning point clickers as an option for faculty that don't want laptops in the classroom, but do want to incorporate polling, and it integrates with Blackboard, so you can capture the data easily and put it in the grade center and have it at the end of the year as well.
How is that going over? Are people enthusiastic about it, or?
It's at least an option for those that don't want the laptop in the class.
But has anybody? Do you have professors who have say no laptops?
And they have an option where you can use your phone also for those faculty that don't mind students using their phones. And again, you can capture all the data so that you have it at the end of the semester.
Great.
And it's a fairly easy way for people that don't want to spend a lot of time creating and including some type of assessment in your class. Because they just you add a couple or 3 or 4 slides to your PowerPoint.
Right.
Rather than having to set up all of the Kahoot or poll everywhere.
Yeah. Great, thanks. Anybody else? Yeah, Joni.
I was just going to say that as we're increasingly trying to figure out ways to include more formative assessment in the classroom, in particular for BARC, in our Marcellus classrooms, we used Instapoll to work through multiple choice questions on the bar exam. So, and it also, I feel like, engages students that wouldn't normally, kind of shy, they wouldn't speak out, so it gives them an opportunity to be engaged. And so as we're going through questions, students can get their answers, and they can physically see, instantly how people are responding to answers, and if everybody's getting it wrong, then people are feeling a little, more relieved, and you can kind of talk through why, go through each answer choice to explain to students, the concept of how to build those skills to determine the best answers from our
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Was there somebody else? Did I see another hand? No? Awesome. Well, thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.